I'm back. I got interrupted in the middle of reading that story because my browser apparently updated itself. Could have told me it was going to do that. Annoying, isn't it, people of Earth? Well, anyway, the time is 12:35 p.m. on the 4th of May 2025, and I'll continue reading chapter 11 of Bloody Brisbane. Intruder in the Night, The Coorparoo Murderer, 1964, written by Jack Sim. We were at the point where I just read out that, let me just find it. I'll repeat from the top of that paragraph. Miss Meta Wood spent many weeks in Princess Alexandria Hospital, dangerously ill. Following her release from hospital, Meta identified the killer of her beloved sister and mother in a lineup, calmly placing her hand on Whiteford's shoulder. The night watchman from McDonnell and East also identified him. "You're the man. Are you satisfied with what you've done?" On 22nd of June 1964, 3 months after he committed the crime, Whiteford pleaded guilty to all charges at trial. It was believed by those present that this was the first time in Australian legal history that an accused had pleaded guilty for a charge of willful murder rather than to put his fate in the hands of the jury. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Stanley said, "This was a crime of unexampled callousness. It might well be a danger to the public that this man should ever be released, except on the grounds of old age or incapacity." Whiteford was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labour on all counts. He showed no emotion as judgment was passed. The double lifer was escorted from the court and taken to Boggo Road Jail, where he was to spend many long years in isolation, despised by the outside world. Right, I've only got 2 more chapters to go, and although I'm feeling a bit tired and lightheaded, I think we'll reach completion with this wonderful but gruesome storybook, people of Earth. All true stories, by the way. Chapter 12. The Whiskey Ogogo, The Valley Inferno, 1973, Jane Gavin, which was still fresh in the mind when I arrived here in 1988. Had many people telling me about the Whiskey Ogogo fire. As the flames roared, the Whiskey Ogogo on fire. Source: the Courier Mail, Friday, 9th of March 1973, page 1, and the photograph below. View from the stage of the nightclub showing its main features. Some patrons managed to get out by way of the fire escape door. The windows at the far end and at the right were covered with heavy curtains, which caught fire. Just dreadful. Fortitude Valley is today once again home to Brisbane's live music scene, just as it was in the 1950s and 1960s, when people from all over southern Queensland converged on countless clubs to let off steam, relax and mellow out to a new band or an old favourite. A myriad of venues have come and gone, their names and those that played their stages, now just fond memories. As one closed, another always opened. The name of one club in particular from the valley's vibrant past will never be forgotten, but not because of the music or the vibe. In the early 1970s, a terrible crime destroyed the reputation of the valley as a safe place to go, accelerating its decline into a sleazy haven for drugs, prostitution and vice. It would take 3 long decades for its tarnished image to be lifted. Many, many people count themselves lucky that somehow they were not there that night. Many were meant to be. Everybody of that generation knew someone who died or someone who came close. Fate played a very strange role in the Valley Inferno. Over several months, a series of articles in Brisbane's newspapers fed people's worst fears. An informer repeatedly warned a respected reporter about a gang that was attempting to extort money from Brisbane's vibrant club scene by firebombing them. Further, he warned that another club in Brisbane was to be bombed soon. These were no idle threats. In January 1973, Checkers nightclub was firebombed and the manager of a popular valley night spot called the Whiskey Ogogo had his car set alight. During the month of February, the Torino club was also firebombed. It was now March and another bombing seemed imminent. In the papers and on television at the time, terror attacks like these were carried out by the Irish Republican Army in the United Kingdom on a regular basis. But this was half a world away. Terrorism did not happen in Australia. Still, domestic terrorism does though, constantly. How many women have died this year already? Still, people were worried. People such as Carol Green's mother, who naturally was already concerned about her attractive young daughter going out on the town, but who also now had to fear the extraordinary. Carol reassured her everything would be all right. It wouldn't be. Carol Green was a 26-year-old secretary from Camp Hill who was one of many who enjoyed live music. She was planning to see one of her favourite bands play in the evening. It should be on the evening. Anyway, on Wednesday 7th of March 1973 with a female cousin. After getting dressed up, they went out to catch the rock and roll group, the Deltones, at the National Hotel, but they were late and missed the set. Carol decided to try and catch them at the Whiskey Ogogo nightclub on the corner of Amelia Streets and St Paul's Terrace in Fortitude Valley, where they were due to play later that same night. The Ogogo had already drawn a bit of a crowd eager to see the Deltones. Among them were William Nolan, Wendy Drew, Brian Watson, Leslie Palethorpe and David Green. Father and son, Ernie and Des Peters, too, were at the club to see the band and celebrate the purchase of their first racehorse at auction from the RNA showgrounds. Pretty 17-year-old waitress Jennifer Davies, who had only been in Brisbane 3 months, brought them their drinks. Jennifer had moved up from Melbourne and was living at New Farm. She worked at the Whisky 3 nights a week and in a restaurant during the day. Also working at the club that night were 29-year-old cashier Decima Carroll and 23-year-old barman Peter Marcus. So some of these names are kind of familiar to me from the Jewish community, so I'm just wondering if he was related. In the kitchen, sampling the cuisine of the resident chef, was fellow cordon bleu Paul Zoller from the National Hotel. As the Deltones took to the stage, it was clear the wait was worth it. Get a little dirt on your hands and other big hits from the bass vocals of Pee-wee were crowd favourites. The atmosphere was electric. Everyone was having fun. Most wanted to stay on till the early hours of the morning. They were friends, families, work colleagues, musicians and their fans, all completely unaware of the impending danger they were in. Following the Deltones was the support group, Trinity. Originally booked to play as the house band on the following Monday, a cancellation meant the group played the Ogogo a full week early. This terrible twist of fate meant 2 of the band members, Colin Falster and Darcy Day, were doomed. 19-year-old Faye Will, who worked for Queensland Railway's refreshment rooms, was also about to die. She had stayed on to watch Trinity with her brother. At 2:05 a.m. on Thursday, 8th of March, Faye's brother decided to go home after saying his goodbyes. This was the last time he ever saw his sibling alive. Hell was about to be unleashed. At 2:08 a.m, Constable D.J. McSherry drove past the club in his patrol car. He noticed a man staggering beside a light blue HK Holden Premier. The car was parked opposite the Ogogo's entrance. Believing the man to be drunk, Constable McSherry circled the block, intending to return to investigate further. After McSherry's departure, a car pulled up out the front of the Ogogo. 2 men wearing black clothes and balaclavas to hide their facial features emerged from the vehicle. They scanned the street in both directions. Seeing no one, they quickly went to the boot of their car and removed 2 drums of fuel. With murderous ambitions, they walked to the entrance of the Ogogo and hurled the drums into the foyer. One of the men ignited the fuel, which burst into flames so fierce that the men were taken aback, but only for a moment. Regaining their composure, they jumped back into the getaway car and fled the scene of the crime. By the time McSherry returned, the cars were gone and thick smoke had begun pouring from the entrance of the Ogogo. The inferno had started. What a vicious thing to do to all those young, mostly young, innocent people. Just evil beyond belief. It was now 2:11 a.m. McSherry got out of his vehicle, focused on trying to find a way to get people out, a seemingly impossible task. Flames were already starting to lick their way around the entrance. Within 30 seconds, black smoke began to pour into the main area of the club. Then, simultaneously, all the lights in the club went out, plunging at least 100 frightened people into darkness. With this, they panicked. Confusion reigned as screams and smoke filled the air. Staff stumbled through the blackness, arms extended, coughing, choking, looking for an exit. Some patrons had been drinking and could not think clearly. Grasping the danger, in-house chef James Chalmers grabbed a fire extinguisher from the kitchen, swung into action. He pointed it down the stairs and sprayed, to no avail, the black smoke so thick he couldn't clearly see the source of the flames. Failing to contain the fire, he focused his attention on getting people out. Risking his own life, James called out above the crackle and hiss of the conflagration, "Here, down here." For 3 minutes he ushered anyone he could down a set of stairs and into a courtyard. Then, as he began to follow them down the stairs, he stopped and turned to go back. By now dense smoke began to tumble down the stairs, preventing him from trying to save more lives. As there was little breathable air left, the heroic cook had no choice but to retreat and vainly hope that anyone who remained inside the club would get out alive. Incredibly, by 2:22 a.m, the blaze was under control. 12 minutes after they were called by police, the fire brigade had raised hopes that there may be survivors inside. Constable McSherry and members of the fire department prepared themselves and entered the still smouldering wreckage of the charred club. Unfortunately, amongst all the burnt-out debris, all they found were bodies. They lay everywhere where they had died trying to escape. Under a table, by the stage, on the fire stairs, on the back stairs, leading up to an infrared light, halfway between the bandstand and the light, around the bandstand. The inferno had spared only James Chalmers and those who he helped to escape. In total, 15 fatalities were recorded, 10 men and 5 women. The true horror of the situation dawned upon investigators when the autopsy report was returned. The majority had died within 3 to 4 minutes from suffocation and carbon monoxide poisoning. The only consolation for their families was that unconsciousness would have rapidly followed inhalation of the deadly gases. Sorry, I have to take a moment here. The news of this terrorist attack sent shockwaves across Australia. The controversial Premier of Queensland at that time, Joe Bjelke-Petersen, promised swift justice, a promise that was delivered. 3 days later, police arrested 2 men and charged them with arson and 15 counts of murder. Their names were to become infamous and to some extent already were: James Richard Finch and John Andrew Stewart. Before I continue reading, I'll just show you the photos. Ground floor entrance to the nightclub in Amelia Street Valley, where 2 4-gallon drums of super petrol were placed to set fire to the premises, and below the staircase up which the flames ascended to the first floor. The Courier Mail, Friday, 9th of March 1973, page 3. Finch, aged 29, was born in England. In his mid-teens, he drifted into a life of crime and was well known to police. Stewart, aged 33, had been born in Queensland and had a reputation amongst Sydney's underworld for violence. They knew each other well. Stewart had been truth reporter Brian Bolton's informant about the threat of bombings of Brisbane night spots, definitely putting him in the frame. However, right from the outset, both men protested their innocence. Police claimed that, during questioning, Finch had confessed that he and Stewart were responsible for the firebombing. Police produced an unsigned record of interview as proof. Finch denied their claim, maintaining that he was the victim of police verballing, that his so-called confession was fabricated. The press seized upon the story and broadcast the prisoner's incredible claims around the country, beginning a 15-year love-hate relationship with the media. Let me just show you the photo of James Richard Finch. You can't quite clearly see his face because he's looking down. To bring greater attention to their cause and to delay their trial, Stewart and Finch began swallowing wire crosses. Unless removed by surgery, they would spring open inside the stomach, potentially spelling death. When the trial began on 10th of September 1973, it had already been delayed by several wire-eating incidents. It's demonic, isn't it? It's just fucking demonic. When it did proceed, they were charged with only one count of murder, being that of Jennifer Davies. Now I wonder how that got reduced down to one when there were 15 victims. I find that a bit odd. A few days into the trial, Stewart swallowed even more wire and spent the rest of the trial in a hospital bed surrounded by legal books after sacking his counsel and choosing to defend himself. The trial lasted for 31 days. 150 witnesses were called. Stewart gave no evidence and remained unrepresented throughout. A delay tactic, by the way. On 11th of October 1973, the jury returned the verdict that had been predicted. Guilty. They were sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labour. Only Finch was present to hear the justice's words. He sighed in disbelief. Stewart was told the jury's verdict 30 minutes later by a senior prison official as he lay in a hospital bed. Stewart and Finch became the most notorious inmates of Brisbane Prison, otherwise known as Boggo Road Jail, of the late 20th century, consistently striving, to draw media attention to their cause. Stewart continued swallowing wire, increasing his repertoire to include sewing his lips together and life-threatening hunger strikes. On New Year's Day 1979, Stewart was found dead in his cell, aged 39. An inquest determined he died of heart failure. Finch fought on in a highly publicised campaign to clear his name. In 1988, after years of good behaviour, James Finch was released from jail under condition that he be deported back to England. Then he did something astounding, confessing to the crime in a newspaper and then later in an interview on national television. The shocking firebombing of the Whiskey Au Go Go nightclub was, until the Port Arthur massacre, Australia's worst mass murder, and it happened here. The events of the early hours of 8th of March 1973 showed that Brisbane, like Sydney and Melbourne, was not immune to organised crime. Here's a photo of John Stewart as he appeared in court during the trial. The Courier Mail, Wednesday, 24th of October 1973, page 1. For 15 years, the trial, incarceration and ongoing doubt over Finch and Stewart's guilt focused public attention on the issue of corruption in Queensland. The subsequent Fitzgerald inquiry proved widespread abuse of power and ultimately led to a new era of accountability and transparency. In retrospect, all this justice must be cold comfort to the families and friends of the 15 victims who perished in the Valley Inferno indeed. Finch served 14 years and 9 months, less than a year for each person who was callously murdered. 14 charges were outstanding. James Finch worked as a nightclub bouncer for a time, but his current whereabouts are unknown. Underground sources suggest he has met with foul play and is no longer alive. Fittingly, there's 13 chapters in this book, so we're up to the last chapter, chapter 13. The Vampire Lesbian Killers, Nightmare at West End, 1989. I've heard of that story actually, ghoulish. Written by Stephen Haynes. Before we begin, I'll just show you the crime scene. A lonely death where the horrific crime was committed. Private collection of James Sim. And the photo below, the site of the West End murder. Police investigators examine the crime scene on the riverbank in front of the doors of the sailing club, Orley Park, which is where I, on occasion, have danced for 5 rhythms. So, yes, also explains why I got a creepy vibe the first time I went there too. I thought it was just anxiety going to a new venue. No, I pick up sometimes on energy like that. Have lost their lives in horrific ways. It explains a lot actually. I hadn't realised why I was feeling this kind of vibe and anxiety each time I went there. But look, there's lots of places I've been to where people very likely died or been murdered or had horrific things happen to them. It's endemic in the city. It's really fucking endemic. That's why I kind of want to get out of here, but where can you go on planet Earth? So much awfulness has happened all over the world. It's not just exclusive to Brisbane. But anyway. Vampire lesbian killers. It sounds like a B-grade horror film title. Instead, it was the name given by both serious and tabloid media to a group of killers whose crime would fascinate and horrify Brisbane and the world. A murder that would enter the annals of Queensland crime as perhaps not only its most bloody, but its most bizarre. Brisbane, 1989. I had lived here for 1 year at that point in time, depending on what date it was. A year earlier, the World Expo had brought the world to town, and with it a long party that tourists and locals took to with a vengeance. Expo had been a roaring success, and many locals felt it had put Brisbane on the map as a modern and exciting city rather than the poor country cousin of Sydney or Melbourne. We did indeed feel that way. But the events of the evening of 20th of October that year were to put Brisbane back on the international centre stage for a different reason. Looking for what they thought, I've missed a line. On that night, 4 young women were moving through the streets of the city, looking for what they thought was their destiny. Earlier in the evening, the 4 had all met at a gay bar in Fortitude Valley. They apparently drank glasses of champagne in anticipation of what they were about to do. They had made plans some days earlier to hunt down and kill a person. The leader of this group had demanded the kill, for you see, she was a vampire, or so she claimed. The leader told the group she did not eat. Instead, she drank animal blood bought from butchers. She was seen making patterns in blood from defrosted meat and cuts to her body. The group had many times attended the ancient and overgrown Toowong Cemetery on Brisbane's western outskirts. It's a beautiful cemetery. It's indeed very historic and ancient. Here they carried out blood sacrifices to raise the devil amongst the old groves of secluded trees. For decades, according to local legends, the cemetery had been the haunt of Satanists and their strange practices. Killer Tracy Ann Wigginton, 24, student. You would not think that was the face of a killer, would you? You could pass her in the street and not think anything of it. It's amazing, isn't it? The demons that hide inside people, waiting to break out at any given time. A bit astonishing, to be honest. A bit chilling and frightening at times. During the lead up to that spring night, the group watched the vampire movie, The Hunger, over and over. Released in 1982, the film had developed something of a cult status. The movie opens with a scene in a seedy nightclub underscored by the song Bela Lugosi's Dead by British goth band Bauhaus. The scene shows the two central characters, played by David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve, seducing a couple and taking them home to murder them for their blood. At about 11:30 p.m, the women ended their celebration and started their search of inner city Brisbane, including the Botanic Gardens and New Farm Park, before finding their prey on River Terrace on the Kangaroo Point cliffs. He was a council worker, drunk after a night out with colleagues, hanging onto a lamppost. The young women lured him into the car with a promise of sex and a lift home. Instead of either, they drove him down to the river at West End. They turned into Hill End Terrace and parked in a dark, secluded lovers' lane in Orley Park, beside the South Brisbane Sailing Club on the Toowong reach of the river. Whilst three of them waited silently in the car, their leader led the unsuspecting victim to the water's edge. They walked down behind the building, out of view of the others. She made him remove his clothes and face the water. Then, in a frenzied attack, she stabbed the poor man repeatedly with a knife from behind. The first thrust severed the two main arteries in his neck. The next severed the jugular vein, spraying blood on the metal doors of the sailing club several metres away. The killer then used another smaller weapon, leaving puncture marks over the upper back and shoulders. Turning the body over, she cut the man's throat from left to right. He was then repeatedly stabbed on both sides of the body. In total, he was stabbed 27 times. The victim's head was virtually severed from his body. Then the killer allegedly drank some of her victim's blood before returning to the car. Years later, she was to deny this took place. I never drank his blood. I have always hated the sight of blood. It physically makes me ill. Even a little cut on my finger. The others present did not see this take place, but one of them later told police their leader looked satisfied or full, like she had just eaten a 3-course meal. Another said she could smell blood on her leader's breath. The deed was done. The group then drove away from the murder scene. Look at this innocuous, innocent, sweet-looking monster one more time. Early the next day, a passing rower training on the Brisbane's river saw the body and yelled out to a jogger to call the police. Investigators arrived on the scene at 6 a.m. The ferocity of the attack shocked even seasoned officers. The deceased was found parallel to the aluminium doors of the club, which faced the river. The area was well hidden from prying eyes. There had been no sign of a struggle. A search of the area by police found the victim's wallet under a slight gap in one of the metal doors. Inside was $35, left untouched by the killer. Robbery was ruled out as a motive. The search, she was feeding on his dying fucking energy like a fucking loose feeder, and accordingly to the story, drank his blood as well, like an actual vampire. But you need to beware the loose feeders as well. That too is a form of vampirism, and I've been exposed to it quite a lot lately in the past few years. And by the way, I was well aware of it, which is why I came in heavily protected, my foes. The search also revealed the most crucial clue, a Commonwealth bank card. Weirdly, the card was found in the murdered man's shoe. The card had the owner's name written across it, Tracy Ann Wigginton. Somehow during the frenzied crime, Wigginton had lost the card. Some people have theorised that the victim, sensing that something was wrong, seized upon the card and hid it in his shoe. No one knows, but police arrived on her doorstep the same day. Wigginton was born in Rockhampton on 4th of August 1965. She's only just a couple of months younger than I, and adopted at an early age by her grandparents. Wigginton, at 183 centimetres, towered over her friends. She was a strong, imposing and articulate woman. She had an attractive face with wavy dark hair, pale clear skin and deep dark eyes. It was these charms that Wigginton used to exercise a powerful, almost hypnotic control over her group, seemingly bending them to her will. Wigginton claimed that in the months leading up to the murder, she was pushed to her emotional brink by a live-in lesbian lover who flaunted her other relationships. She also claimed that she experienced both physical and sexual abuse for a number of years. The trauma she suffered from this led her to engage in a series of failed and very hurtful love affairs. The 4 women were conjointly charged with the murder of Edward Clyde Baldock, aged 47 years. He was a husband, father and grandfather and loved dearly. The horrifying way in which he died was beyond all comprehension. It was a sick, unprovoked attack on a helpless person. Though the crime sickened most people, Wigginton's case also attracted a deal of public and professional sympathy. The Queensland Medical Health Tribunal found she had multiple personalities, but assessed her competent to stand trial. Would explain the card in the shoe giving herself away, the personality that had remorse for what she'd done. It's often the case. In 1990, the group were committed for trial in the Supreme Court, and In 1991, Wigginton pleaded guilty to murder and receiving a sentence of life imprisonment. The rest of the group went to trial. After more than 48 hours of deliberation by the jury, one was sentenced to 18 years for manslaughter, which was later appealed and reduced to 12 years. Another was sentenced to life for murder. The final member was acquitted and walked away, a free woman. Wigginton has been serving her time as a model inmate. She works closely with other lifers in prison on various projects. At every opportunity, she has expressed sorrow and remorse, though she maintains that much of what was written about her was media hype and fabrication. Someone who stabs a man 27 times till his head almost is severed is, I think, exaggerating a little bit about that. Nearly 2 years after the crime, the Courier Mail newspaper, when finally able to report on the trial due to the court-imposed media ban, had this to say on Saturday, 16th of February 1991. Somewhere in the twisted mind of Tracy Wigginton, the line between reality and mythology became blurred. She convinced herself and 3 gullible friends she was a lesbian goddess and a vampire, possessed of dark and mysterious powers, a nocturnal being who could not eat solid food and had a growing hunger for human blood. It is not a question of if Tracy Wigginton is ever released, but rather when. Most who know her claim that she is reformed and should one day be freed back into the community. Is her behaviour in prison just a veneer? Will she do it again? Only with her release will we truly know. The murder and the shocking courtroom revelations that followed were to earn Brisbane an undreamed of notoriety. The case gained worldwide headlines. The media loved to call her the lesbian vampire killer, bloodsucker, or Satanist. The courtroom was daily full of legal experts attending from all over the world to watch this truly unique case. The crime, by its very nature, was always going to have a huge impact on Brisbane. With talk of vampires, lesbians and bloody murder, everyone had an opinion. Soon the rumours and theories grew into legends and urban myths. But the murder did highlight a dark side of the Sunshine State, which until then had been mostly unknown to the majority of people. Queensland has traditionally been seen as a sunny winter destination for southerners escaping the cold to relax in the laid-back small town-like innocence of the state. No one suspected that sleepy old Brisbane had a growing subculture revolving around the night and all things dark. Of course, at the same time as the murder and subsequent trial, Queensland was undergoing a huge upheaval. The Fitzgerald inquiry. Sorry, I've just had a strange note, got a reminder from my hairdresser. 2 days instead of 2 hours before. I'll have to fix that. Otherwise I'll forget. Anyway, that was a bit odd. I must have clicked on the wrong alert. Right, where were we? Queensland was undergoing a huge upheaval. The Fitzgerald inquiry into official corruption not only brought down the Commissioner of Police, but the Conservative government. Gay rights were gaining strength. Previously banned films and plays were being publicly shown. Alternative subcultures and clubs were starting to gain popularity. Everywhere there was change, and change tends to bring out the fear in people. This crime seemed to sum up all that strangeness and fear. Instead of being something that happened elsewhere in the world, it was happening right here in Brisbane. As horrible as it sounds, it really was a crime for the times. And here we have a map of all the crime scenes. Below are sites relating to the stories referred to in this book. Sandford, which is on the way to Mount Glorious that I love to go to a forest called Myala, and the Grange, the CBD where quite a few murders took place, Kangaroo Point, Fortitude Valley, and Dutton Park and Coorparoo. The numbers denote the chapters in this book, not how many people died at each place. I'm thinking, did we start the first story? Was it Kangaroo Point? Yes, I'm correct in that. Right, here we go, people of Earth. We have completed this very ghoulish and gruesome stories, true stories of what has happened in the city I've resided upon, been party to for 37 years on the 1st of August. And it's a bit chilling and humbling, especially given the long years of abuse I experienced here, including 3 strangulations, which could have, should have, but didn't lead to my death. The gods keep me alive for a reason, and even I'm a bit astonished and wonder why sometimes. Not that I'm ungrateful, but just astonished. And here's all the other crime scenes. Most of them look like quite sweet little innocuous places you would not imagine in the wildest nightmare that murders had occurred there. And then there's a few pages with references. I'll just read the back page, which is about the authors. Jack Sim, Brisbane's homicide historian. Jack has been undertaking murder and ghost tours of southern Queensland for nearly a decade. He has been featured on various travel and history-related programs and presents a weekly radio segment on 4BC called Classic Crime. Let me just take a note of when this book was written, because that probably no longer happens, but right, it was published in 2009, so quite some years ago now, 14 years ago. I don't know if that he still does that radio show, because I don't actually listen to the radio or any mainstream media, especially since the COVID epoch. Just will not support their lies and propaganda and brainwashing and gaslighting of the population, fear-mongering and loosh feeding. It's a thing, people, and it's very real, and it's constant propaganda. Although these are very true crimes and very terrifying, you have to try and stay in the light, people. But be conscious of what people are capable of and what you're sometimes moving amongst, especially out in the Brisbane music scene on my ad. Trust me on that one. Some very evil and dangerous people frequent the club scene, and they come across me and try to intimidate me, like the arsehole, nice young man that he was, that sat beside me one night at the Brooklyn Standard and just looked at me, probably saw my tattoo and understood what that means. God, one of God's many varied names in Hebrew or Aramaic. Took one look at me, turned to me and said, "I have a sudden urge to hail Satan." I just kind of laughed, because I've known many Satanists in my day, all fine, upstanding people, nature-loving, child-protecting, totally against the rampant epidemic pedophilia that runs through the city as well. Filthy it is. So give me a good upstanding Satanist or Luciferian any time compared to these so-called other organised religions that are filthy and flawed and harm little children and animals. So this dude thought he was going to frighten and intimidate me by saying I have an urge to hail Satan. And do you know what I replied to him? It was quite clever and witty, actually. I just looked at him, said, "Oh, must you? Just when we're having such a lovely time together in each other's company, must you bring Satan into it?" I said, "Really? I'm not bothered. Hail whoever the fuck you like. But don't try and ruin my day or my night out." He just looked at me in kind of astonishment and went, "Ah," and burst out laughing. And on my other side of me, I had another man who was so drunk he was just about passing out. So I leaned over to him and said, "Are you all right, love?" "Yeah, I'm all right." Anyway, the so-called wannabe, maybe practicing Satanist, just looked at me and went, "You're cool, Tanya." I just smiled back and said, "You have no idea. I'm a daughter of the gods, but not a vampire, not a lesbian. Not that I have anything against lesbians, don't get me wrong, but certainly not a vampire. And bring me a loosh feeder and a practicing Satanist that wishes to do me actual harm. I'm usually, if not immediately aware of it, made aware of it by my gods and my angels and the ancestors that love me. So then I carefully watch the unravelling and the flailing begin to take place. Light and dark, people, yin and yang. Love is the law, love under will, am I right? But don't ever fuck with the Tanya. That was one of their weird little tricks, sending this quite affable young man to sit beside me. I have an urge to hail Satan, thinking that I would get frightened and leave. No, I'm there to dance for the duration of the band, which usually goes for 3 to 4 hours, to do my performance art and my wild dance and to have fun. Not bothered by what demons you decide to present to me, unless you bring it and lay it right down at my feet and expect me to kiss it or fuck it or cede my soul to it. Then we have issues, people of Earth. So, dreaming of that kiss this morning was interesting. I'm picking up that person's vibes and I'm putting them on notice through my YouTube channel. When you publicly humiliated me at the Koala Tavern, you crossed my line. I put up with a lot of nastiness from you that was not actually deserved. But when you did that, boy chick, was a bridge too far. So don't be sending me your energy and dreams. Whether he's conscious or unconscious of it, it's irrelevant. I'm calling you out on your bullshit. Mama T has spoken. Jack Sim has been published in a number of journals and is now heading his own publishing house, drawing on the experience of other writers. Well done, Jack Sim. Jacqueline Craigie, a high school coordinator, special education and former psychiatric support worker. Jacqueline has had many poems, journal articles and short stories published over the years, including being selected as one of the Young Poets of the Year in 1994. She is currently researching a murder trails casebook based on the last hanging in Queensland and the child whose life was ended. Caroline Stevenson, a mother of 2 and environmental consultant in the Ipswich area. Caroline is an author and researcher for Jack Sim's publications. Correspondent with the Queensland Times for 2 years, focusing on regional stories. She remains a freelance journalist. Caroline is currently writing her first casebook for the Murder Trail series, titled Horse Tracks and Stirrup Irons, Death Comes to Ebenezer. Tom Hampstead. After many years working in the education and training professions, Tom chose to spend his retirement telling some of the dramatic and untold stories that abound in Queensland. With Regional Arts Development Fund support, he has already told the story of the tragic death of Anna Katerina Krieger in Gayndah, Queensland. Tom is currently working on 2 amazing stories for the Murder Trails series. Alicia Bennett, Brisbane born, a poet and author. Alicia, I'll just go with Alicia, has worked for over a decade within the criminal justice system. Her debut poetry anthology, The Tincture of Salt, was launched in April 2004 and is now part of the UNE Armidale curriculum within the writing department. She has performed at 2 poetry festivals and has had many reviews by Australian papers. She has a strong interest in women's issues. Alicia is currently writing her first casebook for the Murder Trails series titled Death Before Dishonour, Brisbane's Arcade Murder. Ken Blanche, a veteran of many national papers, including the Courier Mail as a crime reporter and editor. Ken was a captain in the Australian Army and did a tour of duty as public relations officer to the 1st and 6th Battalions, the Royal Australian Regiment RAR and number 1 RAR and 6 RAR in Vietnam in 1966. His awards include the Australian Journalists Association Gold Honour Badge, Most Significant Contribution to Queensland Journalism, and the Order of Australia Medal, OAM, for services to journalism. He is currently working on several casebooks for the Murder Trails series. Ken is an avid preserver of history who has inspired many with his understanding of the past. Shane Gavin. Shane has a degree in film, media and cultural studies and has been writing within that industry for 5 years. He has spent several years working as a game producer. He is currently employed as a computer game designer. Bear in mind, this is all back in 2009, people of Earth. Developing original scripts and plots with a prominent gaming company. Steve Haynes. Steve is interested in crime and local history and is often involved in researching criminals. He is an avid reader and writer within the crime genre. Right. And thus we conclude reading of, well, here's some books of the Murder Trail series you might be interested in purchasing or borrowing from the library or however you obtain them, reading from. Going probably into more detail in each of the stories, but I'm quite satisfied with our reading of the last few days, and wherever you be, stay wild and free, but harm none, so it is done. And just have a little twist on that Wiccan read there. Yes, so it's remained a beautiful day, although rain was forecast for the next 3 days, so that gave a bit of a lie to the Brisbane of meteorology. Trust the science. Well, it might rain later on in the evening. It's raining last night. So there you have it, people of Earth. Take good care, be of good cheer. Remember never to let the bastards grind you down, and when you see the Mama TAK, the Tanya out dancing again, know that I fly in the face of all my enemies. Always have, always will, babies, because I come in clean and clear with a good conscience. But when you fuck with me, The dance continues, no matter what, no matter who, in my own time frames, when I'm good and ready. Bye for now, people.